So this brings us finally to front four, and that's the body language throughout this summit. Now, these are the details that tell the full story of who was actually in control of this meeting. First, the reception itself. Vice President Han Jun was waiting at the airport to greet Trump, a higher ranking official than even during Trump's last 2017 visit. Hundreds of young people in uniforms waving ribbons and shouting welcome slogans. Large crowds gathering outside the Four Seasons Hotel where Trump was staying. Chinese social media absolutely lighting up with enthusiasm for Trump's arrival, something that's not happened for any foreign dignitary this year. Despite years of anti-American propaganda from the CCP, Donald Trump still generates a level of curiosity and enthusiasm and excitement inside China that the CCP simply cannot manufacture or replicate. And Chinese observers, insiders who know how to decode CCP symbolism, notice something extraordinary. The children at the welcoming ceremony, they weren't wearing red scarves. Now, gang, the red scarf is the signature symbol of the what's called the Young Pioneers, one of the CCP's most important youth indoctrination organizations, representing communist ideology and the communist cause. Beijing deliberately soft-pedaled its most visible communist symbolism for Donald Trump and his delegation. That's not a small thing. That's Beijing quietly signaling we need this man's goodwill more than we need ideological posturing. And then there was Xi himself. Chinese observers noted that compared to previous summits, Xi appeared noticeably more restrained and less animated. Some described him almost as looking tired. Others said he appeared unusually cautious. And in a moment that went viral on Chinese social media when the PLA officers saluted during the troop inspection, Trump returned the salute. Xi did not. He bowed. And Chinese netizens immediately asked, who's the chief commander here? The answer, symbolically speaking, was devastating for Xi's domestic prestige image by his own fault. And let's not forget the music, right? Did you hear when Trump, because we got to watch out for copyrights here, but when Trump walked into the Great Hall of the People, what song was the Chinese military band playing? Did you see it? Check it out on X. They were playing YMCA. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. In Beijing with the Chinese military marching band. I mean, I don't know what stage of the simulation we're in, gang, but this is not a picture of a leader who's negotiating from strength when it comes to Xi. This is a picture of a leader who's trying everything in his power to make his guest feel at home. Xi Jinping was literally playing Trump's campaign song at Trump's own state visit to China. If that doesn't tell you who had the leverage in that room, nothing will. Chinese state media cut its CCTV coverage of the summit to just about 17 minutes or so as compared to 27 minutes back in 2017 with Trump's last visit. The People's Daily front page actually didn't even mention the summit at all on the day of the meeting. These are all signs of a leader managing a delicate domestic political situation, a leader who needed to demonstrate strength to his own party while simultaneously making major concessions to the American president. And that's exactly the box that Trump's pressure campaign that we've talked so much about over the last couple of weeks had put President Xi in. So now, when you step all the way back and look at the full panorama of this 4D chess, the flattery that cost Trump nothing, the Iran defection, the economic avalanche, the pay dirt, and then the symbolic boxing in of Xi. What are we actually watching here? We're watching the full expression of what I've been calling civilizational power being exercised at the highest level of global politics. You see, gang, what the globalist establishment has never understood about Donald Trump is that he doesn't operate from the same rule book as the Kissingers or the Bidens or the Obamas of the world. The entire framework, their entire framework, I should say, was built around managing decline, managing multipolarity, managing the inevitable rise of China as a peer competitor while we inevitably decline. Trump's framework, and by the way, it looked like that was exactly what was happening in the 4 years of Biden. And even in Trump's first term, he was constantly frustrated, especially with Russia hoax nonsense. Trump's framework for Trump 2.0 is completely different. His framework is America has leverage. In fact, America has all the leverage in the world. Use it. America has the oil. America has the chips. America has the jets. America has the most innovative companies on the planet. America controls the waterways. America controls the choke points. Use it. And what we saw in Beijing this week is the full application of that framework. Before Trump ever sat down with Xi, he had already moved the geopolitical pieces. He had already squeezed Iran to the point where the IRGC is losing $500 million per day to this U.S.-led blockade. He had already pressured Venezuela, undermining China's strategic backup in the Western Hemisphere. He had already imposed the tariff pressure that forced Beijing to the negotiating table in South Korea last October. And then he arrived in Beijing with the economic Avengers, offered Xi the face he needed to survive politically at home, and walked away with Boeing contracts, soybean deals, oil commitments, rare earth assurances, and China pivoting away from Tehran. Now, I know the skeptics are going to say something like, yeah, but Dr. Steve, can we trust China to follow through with all of this? And that's a very fair question. But here's the thing. Trump built in the verification architecture. That Blackwell chip ban stays in place. You better behave with a last year's model if you want the cutting edge model when we meet in the fall. The rare earth deal, it's a 1-year suspension, not a permanent waiver. Xi's coming to the United States on September 24th, which means that the next round of pressure leverage is already baked in. And Trump himself told us exactly what to watch for. Watch whether Chinese refiners actually start cutting their Iranian crude purchases, because that is the proof that the oil pivot is real. That's the receipt that shows whether Xi's commitments actually hold. Trump's not trusting China on faith. He's built in a trust but verify, a literal verification architecture deal by deal, summit by summit, leverage by leverage. And here's the civilizational bottom line. China's global influence network is under enormous strain right now. Iran's being squeezed militarily and economically. Venezuela, of course, has been taken off the table for them. The BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, is running into pushback across Africa and Southeast Asia. The Chinese property crisis is gutting domestic consumer confidence. Youth unemployment is at historic highs. And Xi Jinping, who's consolidated personal power in a way that leaves him with no factional buffer if things go wrong, Xi is managing all of this simultaneously while trying to project power for his own party. That's the China that Donald Trump walked into Beijing to negotiate with. Not a rising hegemon operating from strength, but a system under enormous pressure operating from fear. And Trump knew it, and he used it masterfully. The legacy media will spend the next week telling you Trump got played. It's the Rachel Maddow media at this point. They'll focus on the flattery. They'll focus on H200 chips, last year's model. They'll focus on Xi got whatever he wanted, Trump got nothing, all this nonsense. It's why their audiences are depleting as we speak. But the receipts tell a completely different story. 200 Boeing jets, 600,000 barrels of American oil per day, 25 million tons of American soybeans per year, rare earth controls suspended, China pivoting off Iran, Xi agreeing to broker a peace deal in the Strait, and the Blackwell chip ban still firmly in Trump's back pocket for September. That, my friends, is not a president who got played. That is a president who just outplayed the most sophisticated authoritarian state on the planet in their own palace with their own brass band playing YMCA. That is perhaps the greatest concession of them all.